Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we explore convenient yet effective shortcuts that will help you get ahead and move forward faster by becoming a better leader. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert, and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
The number one thing that contributes to customer loyalty is emotions. So move onward and upward faster by gaining significantly deeper insight and understanding of your customer journey and personas with emotional intelligence. With your empathy mapping workshop, you'll learn how to evoke and influence the right customer emotions that generate improved customer loyalty and reduce your cost to operate. Get over your emotional hump now by going to empathymapping.com to learn more. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because I have somebody on the show today that's really can give us some insight into a growing problem. It's one of those crisis situations that we currently have right now in the marketplace, in our society, and it's just not getting a whole lot of attention, so I'm glad she's here. Michele Borba was born and raised in San Jose, California as an only child with wonderful parents. Her dad was a school superintendent and her mother was a kindergarten teacher. She is a former classroom and special education teacher with a wide range of teaching experience, including work in a private practice with children with learning and emotional disabilities. She received a doctorate in educational psychology and counseling from the University of San Francisco and a master's in learning disabilities and a BA from the University of Santa Clara and a life teaching credential from San Jose State University. She's an internationally renowned educator, award-winning author, and parenting, child, and bullying expert, recognized for her solution-based strategies to strengthen children's empathy and social, emotional intelligence and character, and reducing peer cruelty. She is an NBC contributor who has appeared 140 times live on Today's Show and countless shows, including 3 Dateline specials, Dr. Phil, The View, NBC Nightly News, The Doctors, Dr. Oz, TD Jakes, Anderson Cooper, Katie Couric, MSNBC, Fox and Friends, Count 2 NBC, Education, Nation, Specials, Inside Edition, Fox, The Early Show, CNN, and it goes on and on and on. Borba is an award-winning author of 24 books translated into 18 languages, and her most recent work is Unselfie: Why Empathetic Kids Succeed in Our All About Me World. She lives in Palm Springs, California with her husband Craig and has 3 grown sons. Michele Borba, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
I am so ready. Thank you, Jim.
I'm excited that you're here. Now, I've given our listeners a little bit about you, but can you tell us what your current passion is so that we can get to know you even better?
Oh, my current passion is starting a national dialogue that empathy matters, and we better do so very quickly. I just am actually working around the world as well. Last week, I spoke at Sesame Street on it, and I'm on my way, believe it or not, next week to Abu Dhabi to do a speech with the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi. Internationally, people are realizing this is a problem. What I want to do is start the United States of America realizing we have a problem with our kids.
Yeah, and I mean, when I had the opportunity to get introduced to your work and hear you speak about this particular topic, it resonated with me at so many different levels because what I see is that all of these kids that actually probably for the past 10 years or more have really been more self-absorbed, have not been focusing on collaborating and get to knowing one another. And it's creating a situation to where when they get into the workplace, we don't have people that know how to get along very well and how to connect very well.
You have just defined what I am hearing from every workplace manager, employer. In fact, 20% of Fortune 500 companies are now requiring their employers to have empathy training, because they're so lacking of it. And what you've also described in crisis is not just something that we think about in terms of our feeling, but it's actually been tracked by the University of Michigan. For the last 30 years, fathom this, they have been looking at incoming college freshmen in the United States of America, and they've been giving each kid, regardless of zip code, regardless of gender, from West Coast to East Coast, Ivy League to community college, this simple little narcissism personality test. And what they found happened actually around the year 2000. This nosedive began to be very clear that empathy was going down, down, down. In fact, 40% drop in 30 years of American kids, while at the same time, the other thing that you just mentioned, a 58% increase in narcissism and self-absorption. That doesn't make a good citizen. It also doesn't make a good partner, and it, heavens for sakes, doesn't make a good employer or employee.
I mean, that's for certain. And, one of the guests that I had previously on the Fast Leader Show talked about how we're actually raising the loneliest generation ever.
Yes.
And also when you start thinking about all of some of these other economic statistics associated with, innovation is declining. A lot of people think that we're very innovative because they only see the tech, sector, as far as innovation is concerned. But they're kind of an anomaly and a standoff and stand alone. But even them, when you look at their R&D spending, the ROI on R&D spending over the past several years has declined dramatically. And it's all contributing to this collaborative issue and this whole people connection issue.
I think that we've summed it all up, and too often what we do is we put it in little packages of there's the problem, where they're lonely, or they're too plugged in. And really, it's one big diagnosis that we need to look at very clearly together. Certainly a plugged in generation, we also know, is, even though they're the most connected, is actually the most people lonely group that we've ever had. And that doesn't make a real collaborative, creative, innovative kind of person, because we're more likely to be innovative and creative if we do so with others. The Thoreau model is few and far between, but even when we're in the workplace, what we discover is many of us would rather be texting or sitting in our own little cubicles as opposed to turning, or we are texting to one another as opposed to turning to the guy who's sitting in the cubicle right next to you. So we've got a lot of work to do. I think the biggest thing that we've been doing maybe is wrong is raising this generation to be about me as opposed to we. And when we flip that, then that would be my definition of an unselfie. A child who thinks we, not me, you flip the lens and you start looking at others, it makes a major difference in our world.
It does. And listening to your TED Talk, there's several quotes that I was able to pull out to me that just stood out. And I also had another guest on the show, Christine Porath, who talked about incivility in the workplace. And one of the things that I saw as a comment, an Amazon book comment about her book, was someone said, hey, that this is really just common sense stuff. I mean, okay, it's common sense, but it doesn't mean that we're practicing it. And one of your quotes was saying how, just because we're hardwired to care, it doesn't mean that it's innate.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we think that in order to be a good human being or a collaborative human being, we have to have won the DNA sweepstakes in altruism. When all of the research is actually on our side, we need to exercise the skill set. In fact, if we look at empathy as a skill set of habits that actually can be cultivated, it makes a lot more sense, because then we can break it down and go, this is doable. Our children are hardwired for empathy. But we also realize that unless we intentionally start nurturing it, it lies dormant. And that's what I think is a problem. We've got a lot of kids in sleep mode, as well as adults, because we've sort of put this over to the side, assume that it's going to blossom, or assume we don't need to work on it. And we've also, as a culture, I fear, put all of our sweepstakes into one side of the report card. It's all about the degree we get, the GPA, the SAT score. As a result, all of those human qualities are really not being worked on. I always tell parents, when's the last time you saw a bumper sticker that said proud parent of a kind kid? It isn't part of our MO. And as a result, I think we're really handicapping our children and handicapping the workplace.
I think, there's so many things as listening to you explain, some of these statistics and talk about, these situations that for me as a father of three kids, who are, two middle schoolers and one elementary schooler. And, my oldest daughter is now getting, ready to go into high school. And so needless to say, this whole, competitive, talk around, getting into a college, the colleges competing, for candidates. And they actually had, three recruiters come from some, pretty notable schools, Duke University, Virginia Tech University, and a small, prestigious liberal arts school up in New England. But when they were explaining their entrance process and how they go through and review the candidates they want, it was all emotional intelligence based. It's like, hey, you've got to have the academic credentials, yes, but then you also have to have this high emotional intelligence in order for you to be seen as a right fit for us. But then but they're not teaching that in the school.
Yes. Yeah. I think in all fairness to schools, we used to do that as parents with our children. And that was turn and talk and face-to-face connection. How was your day? How were you feeling? In fact, we've already realized that we're already shortchanging our boys at age 2. We talk far more feelings with our daughters than we do with our sons. And as a result, this digital divide and the emotional intelligence divide gets further and further away from us. Bottom line on this is they've also clearly came out with just 6 months ago, a list of the top 10 qualities that will be ones that globally all of us need in order to function in the real world. And one of those you've already mentioned, its emotional intelligence skills will be more important now more than ever. We're really going to survive as a civilization. The capital is human capital. And I think that's slowly falling apart. When I wrote on Selfie, and it actually was a 10-year journey, Jim, it was the most difficult thing I've ever done in terms of flying the world to find the answers and interviewing the top researchers. The first thing that was clear, this can be cultivated. Second of all, I tried to come up with, if it can be cultivated, then is it ever too late or ever too early? It seems like it's a womb to tomb scenario. So we're all in good shape. We can keep working on it. But third thing is that there are specific skills. When I wrote on Selfie, I came up with the 9 habits that are critical. It starts with, you've already mentioned it, emotional literacy is the gateway to empathy. It's the gateway to creativity because it's impossible to be pro-social, turn and go, how are you feeling? Or, gee, you need help without being able to read the emotion off someone else's face. So that's step one. And we're already realizing that our kids today, your middle school children, by the way, feel far better off texting than talking. You're not comfortable because we've lost that face-to-face connection. I see people just sitting side by side and they're still texting, they're not talking. The second one is they also need a moral identity. That's a rudder. That means I am going to be social responsible. I am a kind-hearted person. We put the whole bottom line into, yeah, you're a smart kid. But in the bottom line is we've asked our children how important it is for you to be a kind-hearted person. Harvard study was unbelievable. 80% of kids said the most important thing that my parents want of me is to get the good grade. And then we turned to the parents. How important is it? And everybody's face went, oh my gosh, that's not true. Well, our messages aren't seeping into our kids. So we need to develop that. Third one is every employer said they're looking for the cognitive side of empathy. That's the employer that can get into the shoes of the client and go, how would I feel if that happened to me? We're going to be a global world where there will not be barriers and walls. There will be bridges that we better be able to figure out how we can all unite and get along so we're more inclusive. And perspective taking, the cognitive side of empathy also can be taught. So those are just 3 of the 9 that are critical. But the good news is this isn't an app and it's not a program and it's not a worksheet. The best ways to do this are just naturally, intentionally weaving it in. Fourth one is absolutely fascinating, and that's moral imagination. Let's start reading more so we get into the shoes of different diverse groups, understand and journey into different worlds, because what we discovered is literary fiction is one of the strongest ways to boost empathy. Those of us who read literary fiction, they put us in MRIs. They found the part of our brain where compassion is actually lights up when they read passages from Grapes of Wrath or To Kill a Mockingbird. And then they read, Danielle Steele and 50 Shades of Grey and we flatline. So bottom line is we got to read and we've got to get into the world of others. Films can do that. Elevating experiences could do it. But we need to be a little more intentional about it, Jim.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. Even at work, as I was thinking about at a work situation, we talk about, doing more with less, and we talk about,
Yes.
Our productivity and things like that. But we don't look at it in context of, making a connection and being intentional in doing that. And we have to do more of that in order for, that collaboration to occur. There's that whole setting the right example piece. Now, when I love what you said in regards to one big diagnosis, because, one of the guests that I even had on the show, Dr. K.H. Kim, talks about this whole test-centric culture, and needing to compete
Yes.
and get the grade and how
Yes.
that is really, stymied and stifled, our creative thinking. And there was a statistic that I even saw a few weeks ago that mentioned that the number of startups from an entrepreneurial perspective just 10 years ago was in the low teens, and now it's dropped into the low single digits. People just aren't being creative and starting their own thing and being constructive. And this whole connection to other people is, to me, I think it's that one big diagnosis issue that we need to do something about and doing something about now. So my kids when I ask them, why did God put you on earth? They say to help others. And I hope they never lose that.
Oh, yay, Jim. Can you imagine if the world did that? In fact, fascinating thing is it's that mindset that we create in our children that we fail to realize how powerful we are as parents. Just those everyday things of what we acknowledge. They come home and the first question out of our mouths is what you get. But how often do we say, what kind thing did you do? Did you see somebody else being a kind person? The more we talk about it, actually NYU studies are on our side. Children begin to internalize, that's the kind of person I am because that's how I was raised. And as a result, our behavior matches our mindset. What we're doing is instilling that it's all that stuff of who you are is what you get, as opposed to the kind of person that you become. I think character is very, very void in our world right now. And that's an extraordinary concern. When ethics and morality go, and that's what makes us good human beings and want to connect with one another, civilization goes. I mean, the bottom line is we've got a problem. You mentioned creativity. We're already seeing that used to be our staple as the United States of America. But one of the big things we're now seeing is that it's starting to nosedive in the third grade with our kids. That's another huge concern. Collaboration is nosediving with our kids. In fact, Generation Z, which is the generation right now out in the workplace, 3 key things that we see about them. Well, a number of them. The first is, you mentioned they are the loneliest. Second, though, they're not team players. Now, there's a tragedy. Third is they're more competitive. So that's me against you as opposed to we. They are focused. But even the bottom line, when we asked our children 10, 20 years ago, what do you want to be when you grow up? It was a doctor, a lawyer, a helper. I want to make a difference. What do you want to be when you grow up right now? Rich or famous are the 2 items over and over again at the tops of their list. That doesn't make a collaborator either. It makes it, I'm going to get the money.
Yeah, there's somebody who talks about, the phrase and actually has created a brand around the self-made man. The reality is that none of us are that. We all need other people in order for us to make a difference and to get made, if you want to use that as a phrase. I think both of us can probably talk all day long because we're very passionate about this whole issue. And quotes are some of the things that we focus on the show in order to help, focus, drive, do all of those things from an emotional perspective and help us to hopefully make a difference. Because this particular issue, even though we're still talking about one big diagnosis, and if we look and try to boil the ocean, it ain't going to happen. So we have to focus, in on making a little bit of a difference today. But is there a quote or two that you can share that'll help us do that?
Well, I think the number one is it all starts with empathy. Now, that sounds so simple and quote unquote, but if you really start to think about, so what do we do to start turning this around? The easy one that comes back from us is start distinctly thinking that it's all about empathy and everything that you've talked about, from collaboration to teamwork to emotional literacy to people skills. That's the basis of it. And if we don't have that, the rest of it's a scaffolding. It's a staircase to start with empathy and start building our way up. Good old Aristotle told us also way back when that the best way to become a really good human being is to surround ourselves with good examples and then exercise our virtue. So what is our virtue? Maybe it's just our common humanity. Finding the skills that you really wanted, that you think are lying dormant in yourself, and start not just changing your diet, changing your exercise program, but figuring out what am I going to do and keep working out or exercising the habits that are going to make me a better human being.
Yeah, because those are also the habits from a career perspective that cause people with high technical skill to hit the ceiling in their mid-40s and not go any higher. They got to flip the switch. It has to become more emotionally based. Leverage that technical skill to become that better human being in the workplace and at home. So, when we start talking about all of this, it's a huge hump. And we all have humps that we have to go through in life in order for us to learn these important lessons, that self-awareness piece, as many as other things. Is there a story that you can share when you had to get over the hump?
Yeah, the most interesting thing that happened to me in terms of all of this was actually in Rwanda. I was working there. I was distributing backpacks to children, can you imagine, who are all in an orphanage, who have been abandoned by their parents, whose grandparents were slaughtered in a genocide of 100 days. neighbors killing neighbors, absolutely the most horrific thing. And I was in an orphanage with deaf-mute kids, and there I was giving out these little teeny backpacks, very inexpensive. But inside them, they were all packed by children in the United States. There was a pencil, a notebook, little piece of stick of gum, and a handwritten note from a child. And the moment that was just transformational to me was we'd given out these backpacks, and this one kid was frantically going through this backpack, pulling everything out and looking very distraught. And I kept going, my gosh, do we need to give him another notebook? Is he missing the pencil? What it is? No. I finally discovered what he was looking for was the handwritten note from a child. And once he pulled it out, he puts this note up to his chest and he starts to sob. He's reading it over and over again. And I'm standing behind him and it just says, hello, I'm your new friend from Minnesota. I looked up Kigali. I know where you live. And I packed this backpack from you. And he just couldn't stop sobbing. He turns to me, points to my tears, and then signs the word for love. And I realized on the spot, that's the human connection for every child in the whole world. If there's any need for empathy, that child was sharing it. It all starts with one. It starts with face-to-face connection. Changed my life because on the spot, I turned and said, what can I do? And I became the Goodwill ambassador, flew all over the world to the most impoverished places you could possibly imagine, giving out laptops for children from a program called MIT, because I realized that was going to be the one that maybe helped them see there was other kids in the world besides themselves. But the fascinating thing is what I just described actually is what exactly the research says. Empathy starts with one. It starts with face-to-face connection. And when you realize you've made a difference on one child or anybody else's life, you are transformed. It's impossible to go back to where you were. Stop collecting coins to Biafra. Go out and do one service project or make a difference with one person's life. I'm just saying to them, how are you? You look upset. And what will happen is your empathy just starts to open up and you keep doing it over and over again. It's simple. We're overlooking the simple things, Jim.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, sometimes we make it too complex and then we start overthinking things and we put up walls and barriers and then we remain that lonely person. It's kind of strange how that works. So I mean, we talked about the work that you're doing, of course. We talked about, living in Palm Springs. You shared with me off mic how beautiful it is there today. You have 3 grown sons. You have a lot of things going on. When you start thinking about goals, what's one of them? To spread the word that empathy really matters. What I realized when I've spoken to now over 1 million parents and teachers all over the world. And I find the same reaction, whether this month it was in the Philippines, the month before that it was in Egypt. I've spoken from coast to coast. The bottom line from every parent is their mouth goes open when I say you can cultivate empathy. And if it's lying at a 40% drop in 30 years, we have got to realize it matters and we can turn it around. And I think that's the starting point. Look, change always starts with knowledge. And the first step is realize you can make a difference. Collectively, we can make an even bigger difference. My goal is to keep trying to get unselfie into parents' hands. Luckily, the coolest thing is schools are now doing book clubs all year long for parents and counselors and teachers to read it. So they're starting to discuss it. And I think that's where we start. We start with knowing we can make a difference. The thing is, for me, I'm looking at it from a workplace perspective and from a leadership perspective. And, I'm looking at all the statistics associated with, the economic impact, both as an individual and as an organization, when they improve their emotional intelligence skills. Yeah. When you design the customer experience and you use emotion, when you use emotion in order to lead others, it makes not only a world impact, it makes a financial impact. And just like you said, in the title of your book, Why Empathetic Kids Succeed in Our All About Me World. They succeed in a multitude of different ways.
I agree with you. And I think the big piece on that one is redefining success to broaden it so that it's a human being is the success we're really doing. We're all about trying to raise a child who has the potential to be the best they can be, who wants to make a little bit of a difference in the world. Actually, empathetic children are actually happier kids. They have stronger relationships. They do better in the workplace. They're more employable. They're critical thinkers. They have perspective-taking potentials. They have lower stress rates. Phenomenal. Mental health needs are going to be, in fact, habit number 6 in Unselfie is self-regulation. If we can lower our stress, we fight the empathy gap. Because when stress builds, and we know we also have another problem, and that is a mental health epidemic in our country with our children. No place in the world are United States of America kids more stressed, more likely to be depressed, more likely to be suicidal. That alone should make us all shudder and not go to sleep. But if we can teach them the skill on how to self-regulate, and I learned that one, by the way, from flying to Tibet, interviewing monks. The most amazing, just deep breaths, they would tell me. Take slow, deep breaths. It's the fastest way to relax. They showed me exactly how to do it. If you inhale, then hold it and exhale twice as long as you inhale. Oh my gosh, fastest relaxation process. And then once you do that, you can actually do the second piece, which is you can start building compassion. And think about compassion. If you think that sounds soft and fluffy, I learned the same thing on working in 18 U.S. Army bases. Navy SEALs pulled me aside and said, that's the same thing that we are now doing. We've retrained ourselves to keep our fear down, our stress down, and our courage up. I said, what is it? The first thing we learn is deep breathing. My gosh, if the simplest thing from monks to Navy SEALs are learning it, why aren't we teaching that to our children?
That's great.
So there's another piece.
Well, the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that improves the empathy and emotional intelligence skills in everyone. It provides a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement and provides integrated activities that will improve the leadership and collaboration skills in everyone. This award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and higher-performing employees that have great working relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about An Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better. All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Michele, the Hump Day Hoedown is the part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Michele Borba, are you ready to hoe down?
I'm ready.
All right. So what do you think is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
Not enough sleep. There we go. If I had more sleep, I would be able to write, and I'm already working 16 hours a day, but it's all driven by passion.
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Use it, be a humble leader. If you are a humble leader, even from Jim Collins, Jim to good to great, you actually are going to be able to be more supportive and get leaders, other people, your employers to listen to you, because it's all about teamwork together.
What is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
I have surrounded myself with unbelievable people. I have got a network that are very, very supportive. And what happens is they just every once in a while call me up and say, how you doing? We need other people to just build us up. And boy, I have found a network of supporters.
What do you feel is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
Notebooks, moleskins. I have 50,000 of them. I always carry them with me. And that's actually how I've written 24 books. It's always been every time you have an idea, write it down or I'm going to forget it about 5 minutes from now. They are unbelievable. I process them later on, go through them, and all of it comes to be.
What would be one book that you'd recommend to our listeners that could be from any genre? And of course, we're going to put a link to Unselfie, Why Empathetic Kids Succeed in Our All About Me World.
Well, I like empathy. I like actually, there's a book called Empathy that I think was emotionally charging to me. You can get that just about anywhere. Unselfie, obviously, I would hope that you would read. But there was really some other ones that were just really key points to me. Born to be Good was another one that I think was fabulous. They were all instrumental because they all kind of said the same thing, and that is we can cultivate empathy.
Okay, Fast Leader listeners, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net/Michele Borba. Okay, Michele, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you've been given the opportunity to take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you. But you can't take everything back. You can only choose one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
Oh, my gosh. I think the same thing that would be back, and that is... even when in college, the most powerful pieces I ever learned were from Aristotle. And that was about surround yourself with models, because models are how you become the best human being you can be. Look for somebody who inspires you, and exercise. That virtue is made up of habits. Clearly, when I look back about it and I rewind everything, Aristotle nailed most of what I now am looking at now, and I'm reading it back going, he had it all right. What we just need to do is maybe look back at the Greeks.
Michele, it was an honor to spend time with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
Well, thank you for that. I'm on Twitter at Michele Borba. I'm a 1L girl, Jim. Or my website is micheleborba.com. That's the best way. There's always a contact card in there for speaking or evaluating or just reading 50,000 blogs out there about what we can do to raise a stronger, healthier, more empathetic generation of kids.
Michele Borba, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.